You don't want to be in it, right? It says that every single time, and it's full of crap. It said this last time. Maybe it's just the car? I don't know.
I did it the other day with the movie. I couldn't figure out why. I didn't do anything different.
Right, so this should be able to
Maybe
rotate.
the other way, maybe
Nope,
like 180.
yep, this happened before. It's always good to start your live stream with incompetence. Okay. I'll be right with you, Colleen. Hang on a minute. Do that. And we're going to do that. Oh, good. All right, there's the Greek homestead. Shalom. Okay, well, howdy. Obviously, we're traveling. There is Combat G Man of Yah. Shalom, Sister Kate. That is.
You have your microphone on. You can hold it wherever you want.
Oh, okay. Um, sorry that printed twice, said Colleen. Don't worry about it. And the Creek Homestead is buffering. Can you guys hear me? I'm wearing my mic right here so that hopefully the car noise is reduced. So can you all hear me? There is Forest Dog. Shalom. Colleen says yes. Awesome. Yes. There's Ingrid's Kitchen Garden. Shalom. Thanks for supporting the channel, Forest Dog. You get a good shout out and good copy. Okay, and there's Alan Sims. So we're traveling, obviously, but this morning I went down and I checked my uh, taps again on our trees. And I need to kind of back up because I said, I don't remember if it was in a comment or on a different video, that I would edit the SAP live stream video and add to it something that I had filmed. And when I go back and I look at the live stream, it was so pixelated. One of you, I think, trying and doing said it was kind of cool and artistic, but that was totally not planned. And it's because the reception down there is so bad that I will reshoot a video of me collecting the sap so you can see the taps and the bags and exactly what I'm doing, because I described it, but the video is so pixelated you're not getting a good view of what actually went on. Um, and let's see, that particular day, I think I gathered 7 gallons of sap from the 5 trees um, that I had tapped. All of them were maple trees. All of them were maples. They, in our area, for whatever reason, the maples and the oaks still have their leaves on them. So it was easy to identify them, and you also have to have a tree that it has at least a 10-inch diameter um, to be able to tap it. And then the other thing about sap running is you have to have a day in your area that is below freezing at night and above freezing during the daytime, and that's when the sap starts running. Let me see if you all have any comments about any of that so far. Yes, please be careful, big storm is coming. Well, it's true, and we will. Any other comments? None so far. So I'll keep going with what I was saying. Um, the sap runs pretty early in our area. I don't know if that's because we're subtropical, we're a little bit more southern, because some people have commented on videos. Johnny, yesterday, tapped their trees until early February. And the blog that I read, hey, Rachel Heighthouse, my tree sapping supplies are supposed to get here Tuesday. Awesome, lady. And you know how to do it now, and so just get them in there as soon as you can. Um, the person whose blog I saw on Instagram said that she was able to tap 3 times, early January, sometime later in January, and then early February. And it's not so much the temperatures that let you know if you're tapping or not, it's the sap itself. Because once the sap starts turning green, that's when you stop, take your styles out, get your bags off, or whatever your buckets that you're catching the sap in. Everything stops when the sap comes out green. That's the tree saying, you know, it needs the rest of the sap or something. So this morning I went down because yesterday was a day when it was pretty warm. So the sap should have been running, but this morning it was really cold, and I drained the bags, and there was another 4 gallons of sap. And so we've got 11 total so far. And me and some of the ladies in the congregation had a discussion about where to store it because right now we're freezing it. We want to freeze it until we get enough to do a good cook off. And our freezer was already kind of full. So someone in the congregation who has a big deep freeze volunteered to take those 7 gallons home with them after Shabbat. And also the temperatures outside are going to be below 40. And so you can keep sap outside when the temperatures are like a refrigerator, like 40 and below. But if it gets down to 20, then your sap is going to freeze. And if it's freezing outside, that's okay. But you got to make sure the container it is in will not crack when it freezes, because if it thaws and it's got a crack in it, your sap's going to drain out. So there was a whole big discussion about that. How many of you all saw that little picture that I posted of the sap that we had concentrated, the sap that we had boiled? Let's see. What did that? We did that when I was a kid. Don't have many trees on my property, says Colleen. Well, all trees have sap. It's just that maples produce good, more sap and better tasting. Walnuts are supposed to be good too. I need to ID my neighbor's maple. She has a couple big mature ones. So, Forest Dog, if you go online to Google and identifying maple trees, the end of the branch will have little nodes, one on either side of the branch. Their nodes are opposites, whereas other ones are, alternating. So um, you're going to want to look at the end of the branch if you can, and that's a way to identify them. And they have a relatively smooth bark also. Or look for the dried leaves on the ground. Okay, I did. How do you use it? Let me go back to that. Anyway, what I was going to say, Forest Dog, if it's a mature tree and a big one, if it's a 30-inch diameter, then you can put 3 taps in that tree, and the taps you want them between your waist and your chest high. My tree saplings voice. How do you use it? And there's Steve Wilson. What old man in Yah? Shalom, Steve. How do you use the tree sapping supplies? Is that what you're asking, Greek Homestead? Oh, you did. You saw the little jar. That's what you're saying. How do you use it? You use it like maple syrup. It's very sweet and very tasty. Um, I called it a concentrate because I didn't think it was dark enough to be syrup, but everyone who tastes it says it is syrup. So you would use it on pancakes or however you like to use your maple syrup. And it was quite tasty. Really good. So another thing I was going to talk about on the live stream Oh, was how we were going to then try to keep the syrup after we made it, because you got to boil it. You have to boil it for pretty much a whole day straight, and that gets all the water out of it, concentrates the sugar and the maple flavoring, and the finished product is going to be really sweet. But you've got to either refrigerate that or can it. Dribble the syrup on snow to make maple candy, just not yellow snow, somebody said. Better than all the expensive maple syrup from the big box stores. Well, the thing about maple syrup is real maple syrup tastes great, but there's a reason it costs $50 for 7 ounces or whatever the price is. It is very expensive. It is because of the boiling down time, how long that takes.
Labor and resource intensive.
Right. It's labor and resource intensive for a short period of time. You can only do this the first 3 weeks of spring in your area when the sap is running. You can't be doing it in mid-June. Um, and then, like I was saying, you have to either freeze the syrup or keep it in your refrigerator or can it. And that's something that the ladies and I in the congregation are looking into. If you do can it, how do you can it? Do you pressure can it? Do you water bath can it? Um, and then to look up recipes to cook with it. How would I use that as an alternative sugar for things like making jam or baking a cake? Wes S. Hey, shalom. There's our moderator, Wes S. Canadian bark juice is delicious, he says. Yes, it is. Better than all the expensive maple syrup from the big box stores. The other thing I wanted to say about that comment was I used to make maple syrup at home. And my mom taught me just mix equal parts sugar and water and then buy the maple flavoring that they sell at a store and put it in the sugar water. And it tastes like maple syrup. It's not very thick, but it's just sugar and the flavoring. And this stuff, it's really hard to explain how tasty and how deep the flavors are because it's buttery, it's light. Someone who tasted it yesterday said that's better than maple syrup. That's better than maple syrup. Um, and I think it must be healthier for you because it's not processed. There's no bleaching of anything or roasting of anything. You just boil the water off and you have this natural sweetener. So I think it might be better for us. And then I've got to look into, like I said, using it in recipes. How do you use it compared to, say, honey? Honey is a third of a cup for 1 cup of sugar if you're going to use it in like your cake mix. I need to know what this maple syrup is. And I also called it Sasquatch juice.
Squatch.
Yeah, I called it Sasquatch juice because if you believe in Sasquatches, well, by golly, they ought to be using this.
I can't find my Sasquatch hat.
Sorry, maybe you're not meant to wear it. I don't know, sweetie. All right, let's see if there's any other comments or questions. Boiling maple sap is more CO2 producing than cows. Yeah, right. And you know what CO2 is good for, right? This is the thing that people are all upset. Oh, we produce a lot of CO2. What do trees intake? What do trees need? They intake CO2 and then they exhale oxygen for us. And then we inhale the oxygen and we exhale the CO2 for the trees. So more CO2, better for trees. Oh, there's Dirty Roofer, Howdy SK and PJ. Yes. Hello, Dirty Roofer. So are any of you, well, I know one of you is. Is anyone else out there, Force Dog, do you think you will actually tap some trees and try to see if you can get some sap? It's so easy. I just feel like if the Father gives you these natural resources, you ought to use them. And then I have a question to ask everybody. She said she'd like to try. I think everyone should try it. The worst thing, what's the worst thing that happened? The the tree has no sap. Okay, but you lose nothing. There's Norm. Norm. Norm Hollins on the live stream. Sugar is sugar, syrup, honey, beet sugar, cane sugar. Right. Really not hard at all, and we can do it right here. Yep. Rachel came out, and thank you for supporting the channel, Rachel. She's one of the two crew chiefs. She came out and she gave it a try, and she was even not feeling very good and was able to tap a style into a tree and put a bag on it. It's really not that hard. And she has her own property where she can look for the trees and start producing for herself if she wants to. Wes, got no maple trees. I knew you probably didn't, but all trees produce sap. So,
Not all sap makes
yeah, not all sap makes good syrup either, but all trees produce sap. So it would, you'd have to do a little research and see if there's any tree down there that you want to give it a try. Rachel said shofarian syrup. That's right.
Oh, we have a whole business plan for the Shofar Mountain Syrup Company.
We sure do. We have a business plan, and if we get enough sap going and enough shofarians want to help, we are going to look into selling it. My aunt in Vermont does it. I get it from her. How does it taste, Dirty Rupert? Exactly, says Forest Dog. All my maples are saplings right now, and I'm sure my neighbor would be for tapping her trees. And the cool thing about maples, and I was trying to say it, I think in the live stream before, it's that maples grow pretty quickly compared to things like oak trees and other hardwoods. So in 10 years, which I know 10 years, some people is a long time, but 10 years can go pretty quickly. Those trees will be big enough to tap, maybe even in 5 years. There's Westhold Forge. Thanks for supporting the channel. I don't think we have trees like that here. Our trees produce the resin. Resin. Okay. Well, things like apple trees, pear trees, cherry trees also produce a sap that you can make a syrup out of, and so do walnuts. So there might be another tree that would work for some of y'all. I'm pretty sure birch trees are used quite a bit as well. See, Westhold Forge knows these things too, and birches are what kind of western,
Northern.
northern. They're northern, and what aren't they in Colorado? What are the white trees and
Yeah, it's one of the ghost trees.
yeah, ghost
High
tree.
elevation or north.
Yeah, it's north and kind of west in our country, the birch trees.
I think they have birch in the East Coast north.
And in the East Coast too, higher north. Most of my trees are oak and white pine, says Forest Dog. So oaks, you can tap an oak and make a syrup from it, but it's bad for the tree. Like it may kill the tree because they're not as, I guess, a heavy sap producer. So that's kind of on you, like to decide if you want to do that or not. Dirty Rupert says his aunt's Vermont maple syrup is excellent. There's actually different gradations of syrup. There's a finer version, and there's like a the really darker stuff is not considered as nice as the lighter colored stuff. And Shofar Mountain syrup is on the finer end. Someone checked into that. Got Norway maples here, not big on the sap, said Norm Holland. But any maple, Norm, will have sap, the way I understand it.
I think sugar maples are what they make syrup out of.
Well, sugar maples are definitely the most sap producing and the one they use most often to make the syrup. But if you look it up, black maples can also be tapped, and there's another kind of maple that can be tapped. So it's not just the silver sugar maples.
I don't believe it.
Well, look it up. There's a lot of aspen in Colorado, says Patty Sanchez. I don't know about the aspens, Patty. You'd have to Google that. And thank you for supporting the channel. My Aunt 80 plus taps them, gives them to a neighbor who boils it off for her. 80 plus taps. So that's a lot. That's a lot of sap. Birch tree sap is more watery, can be drank straight, and has electrolytes in it, not as sweet as maple syrup, says Patty Sanchez. Well, this is great. I'm off to do things. Laugh out loud. Well, thanks for dropping in. Enjoy your day. And there's Renee Henricks. Shalom, Sister Kate. Shalom, Renee. Um, talking about the syrup stuff, but that's not the only thing we can have to talk about. We can talk about other things. Um, I just like doing live streams because it helps make the time pass as Pastor and I are, you know, having a trip here, going places. Birch sap makes good wine, says Norm Holland. Speaking of good wine, Norm, the grape wine that I made earlier. Oh, I'll answer that question in just a minute, Dirty Reaper. I was talking to PJ about that. The wine that I made this fall, I still had a gallon of it left, and so I took it out of the carboy, took the airlock off of it, and bottled it in the little bottles that I like, the Canadian water glass bottles, and also little Coca-Cola bottles, glass bottles, and it still tastes really good. And I've got a gallon of that, so there you go. How are my chickens laying? And there is a C103. Shalom. Good to see you. My chickens are laying just fine. Um, I have a mixed flock of older and younger birds. Some of them, well, pretty much about half the flock now was born during this past summer, so they're not quite old enough to lay. But I had some from last year that I think I bought a few chicks, maybe, or maybe hatched a few chicks out. So I'm getting approximately 5 eggs a day in the middle of winter with no heat lamp and no light. They are free range off grid chickens, and I'm still getting 5 eggs a day, which is, that's a pretty good thing. Sometimes with these off grid birds, I get no eggs for the 3 winter months.
An egg.
That's right, that's $1 a piece. That's $5 a day. Those are some valuable birds. Can syrup be boiled down to make dry sugar? Steve Wilson asked. And thanks for supporting the channel, Steve. I am not sure, but I bet it could. I think if you keep boiling it though, it turns into taffy or caramel. So there might be another process, once you've gotten into a certain state to then dehydrate it instead of say boil it. But I have not looked into that. But I know this much, if you leave it the way it is as a syrup, it can be used as a sweetener in baking for sure, and like in your drinks. Got any maple trees in Georgia? It's a good question. And the funny thing about our maple trees is we didn't really think about having maple trees until the first fall when we were walking around our property and noticed the leaves were a different color than the oak trees. And the leaves on ours are yellow in the fall, not red like some uh, maples are. So it was someone else who said to us, you can tap those things and you can make syrup from them. And we said, yeah, we know, but we don't know a whole lot about it. And she did. And so she did the first.
Trees with elderberry stalks.
Right? She was a person who didn't have a lot of money growing up. And so she made her taps, her styles, as they call them, out of elderberry stems. And I think she said she learned that from Mother Earth News or something. But that she had done that as a young woman, so she did the very first maple syrup for us. And then this year is the first year I'm making it. One of us is making it from our sap. But she's the one who graded it. She's the one who found that it took a lot less sap to make syrup out of our trees than others. So maybe ours are sugar maples, but if they are, we have some really, really old ones. Well, they're not like 300 years old, but they're at least 100 years old. We have some pretty mature trees that obviously someone planted out there. All right, Chris Bulldog, being from New Hampshire originally, maple syrup candy is definitely a thing. It will crystallize just like sugar. So, Chris Bulldog, when does that happen? Do you have to do that um, at the end of the syrup making, or do you have to do another process to your syrup? Do you bake it? Do you know how you would make sugar out of
No.
it?
Ugh.
Are you all trying to get yourself to move? Is that what's going on in the background? C103 and West? Let's see. It takes a minute for y'all's questions and comments to come up. Uh-huh. All right. Well, you got peaches too. I'm sure you already said that, C103. Versus cactus. Um, okay, so my question for y'all is, what is your biggest concern right now? What is the biggest thing you are worried about right now? And why? Let's see if I can turn this. I cannot turn it. Won't let me do it. C103 is making a long list of reasons for us to relocate. Yeah, I kind of picked up on that. Wes, I thought you guys were happy. You seem very well adjusted to where you live. See there, give you. Dirty Roof says he has no worries. Saving enough money to take advantage of the recession so I can buy land, says Patty Sanchez. Anybody else? I'll tell you this much, I'm not worried about eggs.
Nope.
We got plenty of eggs. Work for me, says Forest Dog. I've been bumming temp jobs for a couple of months, just making ends meet by using preps. All right, so Forest Dog wants a job. I know there were tons of jobs in our area,
There's jobs all over the country.
but they're temp jobs, I'm sure. They're probably like,
No, there's jobs all over the country. People aren't working.
sent more applications out today. Well, at least you're working at it. Good job for you. John Cox, I'm worried that I'm not doing enough to please the Most High.
And do more.
Then do more, says Pastor. Pray more obedience, etc. We are fine. It's all the people that love us from Georgia and Tennessee that think we are doomed here. Laugh out loud. Uh, leaving the path of righteousness is Norm Holland's big worry. Stay on it. That's our advice. Stay on that path of righteousness. Stay in the Word. Stay in the relationship with the Father. I guess just concern for everyone else, said C103, including Wes X. Well, I don't know. I feel like you're on the wrong side of the Mississippi, brother. If the Atlantic Ocean has that big tidal wave because some chunk of the Canary Islands falls in the ocean,
Well, that's only the people east of the Appalachians.
but if you're in the mountains, you'll still be all right. What year did PJ get out of the military?
We don't
Curious
tell people.
if he knew my uncle. Why don't you tell me when your uncle was in, and then we can just say if he was in or not, right? That'd be okay with
We don't
no
tell people.
no specifics. Sorry, Patty. I'm getting an OPSEC head shake. Renee Hendricks says, not being able to be around Torah-minded people because we're failing at it. Sometimes I think my family is so dysfunctional that we are not ready to be around like-minded people trying to follow Yahweh.
There's none righteous, not one.
Well, you're failing at being Torah-minded. You do know it's a process, though, right? You do know that a lot of people just get on the path with their big toe first, and it's usually one of three things that can fix them. One of them is keeping the Sabbath. When they start reading about it in the Word and saying, well, we thought we were doing that, but we're doing it on the wrong day, or we still go out and mow our lawn and go out to eat and make other people work for us. Um, you need to know that the Sabbath was made for you, uh, that you were not made for the Sabbath. It is the mini vacation for you to take once a week, which so many of us joke about. Oh, make me stay home and do nothing. It's such a burden. Uh, a second thing that usually gets people to get their toe on the path are the feast days, when you read in the Word about how you're supposed to keep the feasts of Yahweh forever in all your generations. Um, and you can read about them in Leviticus 23. That people say, how long is forever in all my generations? Does that mean just 1 year that I keep these feasts, or does it mean I should be keeping them in perpetuity? And would I rather do those feasts than say things like Valentine's Day? That usually gets people attention, and they want to look into that and then start keeping those feasts. And then the third one is the food. When you read in Genesis what the Father can, um, Leviticus 11, and also it's in Genesis too, isn't it? Is there something like Genesis 6? Maybe not. Don't question the pastor, he knows. Leviticus 11 talks about what the Father describes as food, and when people start gaining too much weight or start getting really unhealthy and start looking at what they're actually eating and find out they've been eating the wrong stuff for years and years, things that the Father doesn't consider food, um, they start getting on that diet. And I remember some people called it the Daniel diet too, where he ate only vegetables for a while. Or people look into fasting. The intermittent fasting thing is one of those diet deals that has come up lately that's actually pretty effective. It's okay to fast, and people fast as part of their worship of the Father, but it is not a requirement, nor does it have a specified kind of food you eat during that fast, except for atonement. The Day of Atonement, you're to fast from food and water. That's the only required, commanded day to fast. So those are the three pathways that people normally get to Torah. Um, and so, Renee, I don't know what your family's doing right now, but maybe one of those pathways will open up for you. All right, let's see. Hey, there's Mosby's been. Shalom. Shalom, Gardner 67. She finally got to make a live stream, and there's Aid and Wes on the same live stream. Who believes it? Carl Sams says, Shalom, SK and PJ from Warthog Survival.
That's a cool name.
It
Do you have
is.
a company called that?
Do you have a company called Warthog Survival, Carl Sams, or is that just a channel name? Let's see. Yes, ma'am. Much love to you both from Tennessee. Elder Servant Spinney will be heading your way, Yah willing. And then Patty Sanchez said 1979 to 2009. All right. Not being able to come in time because of the situation here. I know that's a big concern of your part, on your part, Creek Homestead, and at least you're trying to do something about it. You're not just sitting there spinning your wheels and worrying. The Limey is here. Yes, Shabbat is the sign of our faith in Yahweh. There's a blessing that awaits each of us here on earth and the world to come. Amen. I'm worried that children will have less to eat this season. Your children or all children, right? Because if anyone's worried about food,
Go get some. Grow some.
Pastor says go get some and grow some. Plant some food. Uh, Start a community garden. If your community has one of those, go in there and plant some stuff. Do the things. Or buy extra food now and store it.
Rice and beans are still cheap.
Buy beans and rice. Beans are still really cheap. One good meal over a day is sufficient, says Norm Holland. I'm above that elevation. Agree with the wrong side. Oh, I'm above the elevation where the flooding would happen. Agree he's on the wrong side. Just prep harder and different to compromise and help others. You would be surprised at our accomplishment in 4 states. Hey, I'm glad to hear that, though. Seriously. Good job. John Cox says all. There you go. There's D Neck.
We were just talking about it.
Yes, we were just talking about you and well, they were just talking about him too. I'm sure he's part of the prepping of the 4 states together that Mark knows about, C103 knows about. I planted 4 boxes of banana pudding. Hope it produces. Can you grow bananas down there? Can you do things like olives and other tropical like avocados? Can you
Where?
even in Texas?
Maybe.
He's in
I don't know.
Texas.
It snows in Texas.
What part of Texas, right? Southern Texas, maybe?
It snows in El Paso.
It snows in El Paso, does it?
Not often.
Wes says they can do olives. Can you do avocados? Can you do nanners? People,
Can you do rambutans?
can, can you do rambutans? Lychees? Um,
Dragon fruit? Papayas?
Dragon fruit, papayas, mangoes? Can you do any of those? In our area, people do plant plantains and bananas um, in the yard too. And I think the whole thought process there, well, the tree that dies in the winter, the root system is still alive.
Well, there's a way that you can take the trunk and save it and replant it next year. Jim Wally's told me about that.
Pastor's saying you could take the trunk and store it and replant it. D-Neck says pawpaws. We got pawpaws in our area. They taste like bananas for sure.
Kind of.
I agree, Norman. Not just kids, but adults too. I fix one good meal a day, usually around 6. Leftovers or lunch the next day. That's how we conserve food here. I just make sure I cook a little extra. My wife and I have been buying extra shelf-stable food and storing to give away when the need arises. Well, that is very kind of you, John Cox. It's nice of people to store up more to be able to share with others. There's Palmetto Paratrooper. Shalom, fam. How are you guys doing? Good to see you.
Palmetto paratroopers on there?
Uh-huh.
Long time no see.
Yeah, long time no see, man. How you all been? If you can do olives, you can do anything. It means that your microclimate is Mediterranean, which is the best for growing food, veggies, trees, or anything. Well, ours is almost that, Greek Homestead. We are subtropical, but not tropical.
Grow figs.
We can grow figs, um, and we do. And I had a fig, and I did a video about it or a post or something of how delicious that fresh fig was. Um, But we cannot do avocados. We're too cold for that. And I think maybe too cold for olive trees unless you took them back in your greenhouse. Hey, there's Lone Star Living. Shalom, I'm late but here. Yay! And there's trying and doing. Hello, SK. Hello, lady. How are you? I have a 15 plus foot fig tree in South Carolina. Oh, we have a 10-year-old fig tree that could be 15 foot, but I pruned it. I pruned it before this last, so that would have been last winter. I pruned it, and so it's still kind of bush-like. But it did grow some figs on
They
it.
can grow 30 feet tall,
I
30
know.
feet wide.
If you want them, we can grow figs like weeds, and you should. Figs are pretty
Figs are good.
tasty. Yeah. There are specific species of olive trees that can tolerate the cold. Not too cold though. Palmetto said he loves getting 2 fig harvests a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that spring and summer? I mean, spring and fall? I planted a fig tree down on the other end of the property called a white fig that's supposed to be able to go a bit colder. Um, and I'm wondering if the figs will look different on
You
it.
planted a white fig?
Yeah,
Where?
down by the behind the duck house.
Really?
Yeah, the little duck house. I got that at the end of the season. The Dirty Roofer says, "Got to roll. Have a great trip. See ya. Thanks for dropping by. Appreciate it, Dirty Roofer." I could look into getting an olive tree if it was cold tolerant. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. The plastic on the greenhouse shredded in our last very windy storm. It was 2-year old 4 mil plastic, which is not, you know, they don't claim to be weather resistant or anything, but it was an experiment. And so I'm hoping very soon to get real greenhouse plastic on that frame and to start growing things in there too. Because when that plastic was torn up, I had probably 10 cabbage plants in there and a parsley that was very healthy. Had 3 Brussels sprouts that were healthy, and it pretty much wrecked the whole thing. Gardener 67 says, "I'm working on making my own dirt right now. I dug a big hole, put in tons of leaves, mulch, bark, and add all my kitchen scraps. Mix in a good once in a while, and I'm anxious to try it on my tomatoes." Well, there you go. And we've been putting ashes out on our beds. And I found out, and I'm sure you all knew, ashes are alkaline, and we do have very acidic soil. So I'm going to be using them and the rabbit manure as much as I can to improve the soil on the land and give it, you know, a little depth because mostly it's just rocks with leaves on it, and it's very, very acidic. Um, and see if we can get more parts of the property producing this year, more grass and more areas to put vegetables and everything in. The olives are very small here, but they are olives, said Wes S. That's awesome because you can make oil from your olives as well as eat them. I don't know. Maybe it's frozen. Oh, it's low. Yeah, we're out. Yeah, could be out. Let's see. Gardener 67, thanks for supporting the channel. DNX says, "I'm cold hardening some Myers lemons this year and just planted some hybrid chestnut trees."
Wow.
Awesome. Good job.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
Our neighbor has a Chinese chestnut that it's a, it is a chestnuts, right? We went up and gathered them and cooked them and ate them.
Yep.
Yeah. Who shared chestnuts with us in the past, and they were so tasty. I know he doesn't need or want praise, but my attitude has changed on every level because of Pastor Joe and his righteous advice. The Most High told me to listen to him. Well, hallelujah. Thank you for saying that. Sister, it was an opossum in the live trap behind the barn. That's what got my 2 leghorn girls, a dad burn possum. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, those possums will get in there if they can. They can be very rascally and they can get in pretty small spaces.
Yeah.
We had one crawl into where my chicks were and take a chick. And so I had to change how I was keeping them because I didn't think it could get through the space, and it was a little possum that did it. We don't have any commercial oil production. We have apple orchards 70 miles north, says West S. Well, I meant for you. Like if you could gather enough, say a gallon or two, or maybe a bushel basket of the olives, you could press some oil for yourself. There we go. I'm still waiting for my walnut trees, but the plan is to cut down some trees around them to give them some more sunlight because um, we had someone check them out and think that they're all in a forest, and forests are lovely, and forests, do shade and all sorts of things, but they can also choke out trees. It can be harder for the trees because they're not getting as much sunlight to do as much production. And so that's another thing we're going to be looking at doing over the course of, this springtime is cutting trees down and letting fruit bearing trees have more space and more sunlight. As a matter of fact, I've been cutting a bunch of little cedars around the huckleberry patch we found to open that up and to let more sunlight get to those huckleberry bushes. Yeah, you're my huckleberry. All right. Lone Star Living, I wanted to ask you, how's your homestead going? Do you have any sheep having kids? Been on a track hoe and skid steer all week to expand. Feel manly right now. Laugh out loud.
Skid steers are awesome.
Yeah, C103 said,
Awesome.
yeah, they are. Both of them are. You can do some serious work with those things. And I know Jay Johns has been showing himself driving his tractor down to his creek area and clearing out down in there. Yep. And I did another thing, excuse me, with my chainsaw and some pruners up by our ponds. Also got some milk jugs that blew in it. Up by our pond to clear out the area where my grandkids were fishing. It was full of baby, which one is it? Honey locust that grows the really long thorns.
Yeah.
Was full of.
Or black locust. I don't know.
One of them. Yeah, long thorn locust. There were baby trees of that shooting up uh, limbs with little uh, thorns shooting off of them, and also the biggest poison ivy vine I've ever seen was growing out of the same ground. It was, 3 or 4 inches around, had all those hairs on it, and were climbing up into the trees. It was so thick and woody, it looked like a cedar tree to me, and I thought, that's really weird. I've not seen a cedar with this hairy bark before. And then I realized it was the poison ivy. So then after I used my chainsaw to cut parts of it down, I dug along the grounds because we don't have a lot of dirt. So these vines, they grow it on top of the rocks. And if you just dig down a little bit, you can find the root vine of these plants. And so I was hacking and chopping at them with an axe to kill the actual root system to try to get rid of these things, just to get more sunlight into the area around the pond and make it more pleasant to go there and try to fish, because you don't want to be dodging the thorns while you're trying to throw a line out. All right, so let's see what we got. Wes S. We grow apple, grapes, wheat, cows, cotton, goats, mesquite, and rednecks around this part of the world.
We're going to have to stop.
Okay, we're going to have to stop and get more fluid.
We're going to get fluid and scrape this window.
That's all we have here. Appalachian Rednecks, laugh out loud. Homestead is doing okay. No new lambs this year. Switching breeds to Katahdins in the spring. So we got rid of our rams. The Katahdins we have are doing good. Going to keep our Dorper ewes and just have a cross. That's a good idea too. Honey locusts have the nasty thorns. Tree removal and care is my profession. Ornery trees they are. They sure are, John, and I'm going to be killing the ones we have. I'm looking at OSU soil testing price list. Very reasonable. Well, there you go, Palmetto. You can also get kits from gardening places too. There's Richard Barlow. He put a zero. All right, so we're gonna have to get six. There are six, he said. Richard Barlow said we're gonna have to get offline now. Wow, Native Americans made fish hooks from honey locust storms. Good to know, Palmetto. We're gonna have to get on offline now because we have to do a stop to get gas and whatever. So I'm gonna say shalom to everybody. Stay alive, don't die, says Wes S. Shalom, Godspeed. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Wonderful. Thanks for the chat. I appreciate you being there. And we will see you around. Bless y'all. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Safe travels. Yeah, good.